Today I want to talk about the shooting out of Shreveport, Louisiana. This is the shooting that involved police officer, Alexander Tyler, and he killed a man named Alonzo Begley. This is not a fun shooting to cover. This is a tragic incident. It's tragic all around. I think the best way to kind of cover this topic, I went ahead and edited the video down. I straight up swiped this off of police activity. And the way I edited this video down is we're not going to actually watch the shooting, but we're going to watch the aftermath of the shooting. And then we're going to go back and watch what happened prior to the shooting to kind of discuss what happened here so that we can prevent stuff like this from happening again. I don't know, when I watched the video, it looked pretty clear to me that this was an accidental shooting. I don't believe that the officer intended to shoot Mr. Begley, and it's incredibly sad the way this all went down, and it's unfortunate that he lost his life. To put all that in perspective, I want to play a little clip of the officer's reaction after he shot this man. I think that this is important for people to see and hear. So that's where I want to start this video.
No. Fuck, dude. No.
Hey, come on.
No.
Come on.
No, man. No.
Come on.
No, man. No.
You're good.
No, man. Come on, dude. Come on, man.
Send the EMS right now. 1019.
Come on, dude. Hey, come on, dude. Stay with me. Bro.
It's definitely hard to watch. And it's clear to me that the officer did not intend to shoot this man. If you watch the video on police activity, I think it's fairly obvious that he was caught off guard, had his finger on the trigger, shouldn't have had his finger on the trigger, and this was an accident. When I came across this video, it was shocking to me. And it was something I chose to share with my friends. And I shared it in a little group message with, and I just put on there, this looks like an accidental shooting to me. The officer has already been arrested and charged with negligent homicide, which I guess to start off with, I think that is appropriate in this case. You're responsible for your actions. You're responsible for every round that comes out of the end of your gun. You're responsible. You're going to be held accountable if you're carrying your weapon in an unsafe manner. And somebody lost their life in this situation. So there's absolutely no excuse for what happened here. You can believe that somebody needs to be held accountable and at the same time have some compassion for what they're going through, because I fully believe that this officer, to say he's remorseful would be a tremendous understatement. This is horrible. It's a horrible thing that happened to this officer, and it's a horrible thing that happened to this man. When I shared it in the group, it was interesting, the replies. The first reply that I got back from somebody was, there's a common thread to all of these things, meaning that this man ran from the police. Like, if he just would have hung out in his apartment, this wouldn't have happened. And I 100% agree with that statement. When these things happen, we tend to put all the blame on the police, because the fatal blow came from the police officer, right? Which I've already said that he needs to be held accountable for that. But there's also a significant portion of the responsibility for what happened falls on Mr. Begley. It's not that he ran; it's the manner of which he ran and the situation that he ran with, because officers were dispatched on this call of they classified it as a domestic dispute. I listened to the 911 call. It's his wife or his girlfriend calling in saying that he's highly intoxicated, he's out of control, and he's threatening her and her daughter, I believe it was. The agency that I work for, we would have classified that as a domestic violence call. Another perspective that I got from somebody in the group that I thought was a very good perspective and something that is worth mentioning, and it's a very teachable moment because our goal is to prevent these things from happening ever again. And the point that he brought up is that he is tired of seeing these instances where, you know, the officers walk from his perspective, you know, and he did mention he hates Monday morning quarterbacking people, and I want to make sure that I'm clear about that as well. But we need to remember as police officers going forward, watching these events and learning from them and trying to prevent this from happening again, that when you walk into a situation that should be classified as a domestic violence situation and you have the suspect kind of pussyfooting around, pulling away from you, he's actually giving these danger cues that you should snatch onto him. The officers did not do that in this case, and that allowed him to run. That was kind of what set off this tragic set of events. Let's watch that part of the video from the beginning now as well. This is when the officers walked up the stairs, knocked on the door, and this is how they were greeted at the apartment.
What's that? That's it. Hey, how you doing, bro?
How you doing?
Hey, what's your name?
Alonzo.
Hey, can you step out for me?
No.
Alrighty, so if you listen to the 911 tape on the complete video, the woman says Alonzo is the suspect. He's highly intoxicated. He's threatening me. He's out of control. The officers knock on the door and they're greeted by somebody. They say, hey, what's your name? He says Alonzo. So they know at this point in time they have the suspect. They ask him to come outside. He refuses to come outside. This is one of those situations where, I mean, you give them a little bit of wiggle room, but you want to latch on to that person. That's how we are trained as police officers. This is also one of those things that kind of comes in and gets disputed a lot. And there was in the city of Columbus, Ohio, one of the city council members was on video lecturing police officers about, you know, when you respond to a nonviolent call like domestic violence, you shouldn't be so aggressive. I think what she was trying to say is when you respond to a nonviolent call like a domestic dispute, you should not be so aggressive. Here is an instance where officers were dispatched on what was at the time a domestic dispute, something I would call a call about domestic violence. They have a suspect who comes to the door, identifies himself, and then tries to close the door on the officers and leave. This would be a situation where the officers probably should have been a little bit more aggressive. They should have grabbed him while they had him at the door. They didn't do that. And let's watch how it goes from there.
My dog. I got dog.
No, come on in, sir. He's disturbing the peace. So people next door over there.
Let me put my dog
over there.
Sit down.
Let me put my dog.
Sit down.
Intoxicated. That's right.
Let her. Hey, come here.
The dog up.
Come here.
Put my dog up.
She can put the dog up.
That's right. He's disturbing the peace. They got weed back there. He's clowning. The woman next door with him. She's not really. I'm about to give you quick.
So this is a domestic, I'm going to call it a domestic violence call. A woman called in, said that her husband or her boyfriend was incredibly intoxicated. He was threatening her and her daughter. You just walked into the apartment with him and allowed him to walk into a back bedroom. This is where things can get very dangerous and violent for the officers, and this is not something that you want to allow to happen. I'm assuming that what the officers were thinking in this case is that they didn't want to put hands on the guy because he was so intoxicated. His eyes looked crazy. They didn't want to escalate the situation, because that's what we're accused of doing all the time, is that we walk into a building where we're bullies. We act like we're in charge. We start grabbing onto people, and that we We escalate the situation because we need to be taught de-escalation. In a situation like this, grabbing onto him would have saved his life.
Hey, hey!
So he jumps off this balcony. He runs around this building, makes a left-hand turn, ends up kind of hiding in a nook there. And when the officer who was behind this officer was Officer Alexander Tyler, goes running around that corner with his gun out, sees him, instinctively popped off a round. I think it was accidental. Mr. Bagley bears a great deal of responsibility for his death. He ran through an apartment and jumped off of a balcony on a domestic violence call. He should not have done that. His actions led to his death. The officer whose body camera we're seeing right here, he will not be criminally charged. He will not face any discipline. But in reality, he bears some responsibility for Mr. Bagley's death as well. These are the moments where you need to forget about what the media is saying. You need to forget about what the activists are saying. You need to forget about what the politicians are saying. And you need to do your job the way you're trained to do your job. You are trained that way for a reason. When you respond on a call of domestic violence, you don't let the main suspect walk away from you and enter a back bedroom. This is another one of those situations where there were a lot of very small mistakes that were made. You could even argue that a negligent discharge, if it doesn't hit anybody, some people would say that's a small mistake. I haven't seen it personally firsthand, but I've heard many stories. I was listening to Dexter Pitts' book the other day, him talking about how he responded on a scene and had a negligent discharge. You get a write-up, it gets put in your file, and that's the end of it. If you have a negligent discharge that hits somebody in the chest and kills them, that's a very small mistake that turns into a very big mistake. But that wasn't the only mistake made on this call. I guess that's the main point that I want to make. So I think people need to be a little bit more understanding when a police officer arrives on a call. It might not even be domestic violence. It might just be an intoxicated person causing a disturbance. When an officer arrives on a call about an intoxicated person causing a disturbance, they see that intoxicated person and they go and they grab onto them and they start putting them in handcuffs, and that person fights, and then that fight turns into a use of force by the police officer. People in the crowd and people in the community and people in the media are going to classify that as an officer who escalated that situation. But what they're forgetting about is what might have happened had the officer not grabbed onto him. The officer might have prevented a more serious use of force by doing that. In a situation like this, had the officer walked into the building, grabbed onto this man's wrist, and immediately locked him up, it would have saved his life. I think that's all I have to say today.